The reason why moral injury is so pronounced is because it's actually happening now. It's a constant. The most egregious form of moral injury is when you are the voice of change, and that change gets shot down.
Hey everybody, welcome to the First Things First, a show where we talk about setting your priorities in the right order to help you fall in love with the job again. I'm your host, Helton Pereira, and this is my friend, Nate Garner. Nate, welcome.
What's up, brother? How are you?
How you doing, man? I should correct, not Nate. It should be Tuna. So that's what you like to go by. That's what you like people to call you. So where does Tuna come from? Let's start with that.
All right, well, that's a banger to get started with. I guess 23, 24 years ago, I'm in fire school, and I've always been a big guy, and I'm always have been probably a little too cocky for my own good. So we were doing this this Bangor evolution where it's basically they don't do this anymore just because of the child endangerment, which is two guys bed, they foot the ladder, and then so it's literally 50 feet straight up in the air, and you just climb it up, and you ladder lock off. Well, I was running my mouth, and I'll never forget him. Instructor Cooper looks at me and says, "All right, big boy, let's see how tough you are. Grab that 2.5 and take it up to the top and flow water." Not knowing anything about 2.5s or nozzle reaction or anything like that, I decide to get up there. So I go to ladder lock in, and I've got size 13 boots. So I work my foot in there. I'm just trying to hold on to this 2.5, terrified I'm going to fall. Finally, I get it, and I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So I start flowing water, and everything's good. And my instructor's pissed. And he's like, all right, get down. I'm like, all right. Drop the hose. Try to get out of the ladder lock. When I tell you I'm stuck, like I'm stuck. I've started to panic a little bit now, and I'm trying to rip my leg out, and my foot is just seated tighter under the rung. And my instructor is looking up at me, just berating me. And finally, he's like, "God damn it, you look like a fucking tuna caught in a net. Get down." 23 years later, I'm still tuna. It's had a bunch of iterations, big tuna fire, all this other bullshit. But what's resounded ever since was literally, that's the fire service, right? Like he said it one time, and that literally turned into its own. So I've been tuna. I mean, wife, kids. I mean, yeah, tuna. It is what it is.
Tuna it is. That's an awesome story, brother. So with that, tell us a little bit about your fire department journey. How did you get into it? Where you work, and tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was pretty listless, man, for a good period of my life. I've made snow as a snowmaker. I've done landscaping. I was a chef, worked security in bars, and there was just this sense of that I wasn't making the world a better place, like in any capacity. I was actually making it worse. Like when I'm slinging drinks and stuff, I'm facilitating the demise of people. And there was just the thought process is that I had an experience in college that shook me to my core. Was sitting out front of a bar in Tallahassee, right off Tennessee Street, and I was bouncing, and I'm sitting there talking to a cop, and I just looked to my left, and I watched this kid get waffled. I mean, he gets hit by this truck, and man, it sounded like a full Yeti cooler being dragged on the concrete, and I literally froze. I didn't know, like, I'm like, holy shit, I just watched somebody die. And while I'm in my like frozen state, I kind of come to, and I look over. That cop had sprinted 100 yards down the road. He's got traffic in both ways stopped. He's on the radio calling in. And I don't know if I've ever felt so ineffective or just like a waste of space. I was like, look at the variance in the reaction. I, I literally froze. And that's not me. So that kind of set a seed in my mind that I'm going to be a cop or a fireman. I will manage that, that feeling, that fear. So a couple years later, I ended up trying to get into the police academy. And so I went and did some rides with my buddies, got spit on, fecal matter thrown at us, all kinds of fun stuff. And I thought, man, I'm not sure about this. And so I went and took the CJBAT, which is the aptitude test. And I think I got 100 or something on it. And the commandant's like, hey, listen, you're going to be in the next class. And thank God for my little brother, man. My little brother was a paramedic at the time. And he's like, dude, listen, my little brother was a cop, a paramedic. Now he's a freaking nurse anesthetist. But he's like, listen, go get your EMT. It'll make you more hireable. And I was like, all right. So I get into EMT school and I do my first ride. And it was from the moment I stepped in the firehouse, I fucking knew this is it. This is, dude, I literally drove home that night and cried because I was like, for the first time in my life, I knew without a doubt what the rest of my life was going to be about. That I was going to kill myself to freaking get into fire school, get and do the things that I need to do. I rode with those guys. They're supposed to leave at 5. They let me stay till 1 a.m. I think we ran 20 something calls. Multiple times we get on scene, and it's a rough area. The station that I worked in, Riviera Beach, and people are like, "Thank God you're here," and I just thought, man, this is it. This is where you make a difference. So from that point on, it was just, I sucked in college, and the reason why is because I wasn't into it. Now I'm into it. Number 1 in fire school, number 1 in paramedic, number 1 EMT, because it was just like, this is it. Like, it was like my ass. So I guess those two things, just, I played sports my whole life, and that teamwork and that aspect of it was what really, but I think the biggest thing was just the fact that there was never a time when I rolled out of that station where I didn't feel righteous, if that makes sense. Knowing that we're about to go do some hero shit. And that the guys that I'm working with are willing to put it all on the line for somebody they've never met, man. That it's a powerful situation when you go to a firehouse where there's a bunch of pipe hitting dudes that know what they want, know they want to leave the fire service better than they found it, man. That's a synergistic environment where we solve the world problems at the kitchen table, right?
Yeah. So you found purpose and identity in the fire service. You now get hired in the fire department. Is there like a difference between that first day that you step foot, where like, okay, I know what I want to do, to okay, now this is my job. Like, take us to the good things, the bad things. What was your career like? Was it all super awesome? Or there hard times? Walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so this is, that's one of the biggest things I think is so important for new guys to understand. One of my really good friends sent me a picture, well, 3 pictures, right? And one of them is just a swirly line, but the end is pointing up, right? The next one is zigzag like this, but the last one is pointed up. The last one is, straight down or whatever. The point is that as long as at the end of whatever predicament you've encountered, your moral compass is heading north, you're good. And sometimes it takes a long time for things to get good. And more importantly, things don't get good without you putting the work in. So, so I worked for Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. I think we have 1,800 line guys. I think last year we ran somewhere in the realm of 160 to 180,000 calls. I've been retired for 2 years now, so I want to say that we have 65 stations. Our careers start off in a very unique way. We have a 12-week recruit academy that for a long time, I'm not sure what the attrition rate was, but when we went through, I think we lost 20, 22 guys out of 40. Um, it was nationally known. It's called Camp Gribble. And at the time, I didn't understand why it was so important to have a shared suffrage event like that. And that's what that is, right? They make life hell. And you create bonds. 20 something years later, there's not a dude in that class of mine that I can't call up at 3:00 in the morning and go, man, I'm fucked up. I need help like now. And it was because we weathered that storm together. So as my career went along, people just couldn't understand when I became one of the instructors in our recruit academy, which is by far and away the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Nothing, everything pales in comparison to that. Being able to be there as that kid comes out on his last PO. So when you get to get down on a knee as this guy's, because I love teaching search, and he comes out that final door, and I get to peel his mask off as he's laying there dying, and I put my cheek up next to his, and I go, "Welcome to the brotherhood." And I get to watch grown men just break down because 12 weeks of sacrifice has paid off. You are going to be a Palm Beach County fireman, man. Starting people off on their journey in this just incredible career is probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. So through the darkness, which was just getting beat down, right? I mean, when you're running 15, 18 calls a shift, and the hospital is an hour away, you don't ever come back. And it doesn't take long before that starts to beat you down. So that was my career. Has, to answer your question, it was illustrious. Walking into the firehouse the first time, that was the reason why I brought up the recruit academy, because one of the lead instructors was one of the scariest sons of bitches I've ever met. After I taught for him, literally as a captain and a fellow recruit academy instructor, to this day, if I hear his whistle, I shit myself. What did I do? Oh, I did it. I did something wrong. Like, it is so ingrained in your soul because this guy held such command. So when the assignments come out, last day of recruit academy, and station 33 is my station, I'm like, oh shit. Yep. That's my recruit academy instructor station. This is going to be interesting. So if you want to know how my career was, this will give you a synopsis. I walk into the station, hour and a half early, do all the truck checks, whatever. 10 minutes before my shift actually starts, my first shift actually starts, what do you think drops? Big ass structure fire. I am shitting myself. I am brand new. I am on the engine with this guy who I am more scared of than my own father. And I look at him and I go, do I go on this? And he goes, are you a fireman? And I was like, he goes, do I need to tell you are? And I was like, I don't know, maybe, help me. And he goes, get on the goddamn truck. And off we went. And that dude handed me the nozzle. So I'm not kidding you. My career started the first 10 minutes I was on the nozzle. So yeah, I've been, as much darkness as I've persevered through, there's never a moment when I look back at my career where it isn't just smiles, because it's just, where else are you going to go, where you can have people, hurting themselves from doing 16 handstands, springs down the road because they're higher than a kite. Like, where do you get to go? There's no other job allows you the freedom to experience humanity at its craziest like our job. And it's just, it's always exciting. So I had a banger of a career, man. Very fortunate.
That's awesome, brother. That's that's the way to start right off the bat for sure, with the structure fire and on the nozzle for sure. So tell us a little bit. You said that you're retired a couple years ago. How did you come to to be retired. You said you had what, 17, 20 something years in?
Yep. 18 and a half or 19 in the fire service. And then as a paramedic, I'm 24 years, something like that. Yeah. So I'll make it short. So about 10 years prior to retiring, we had a call, and 3:00 in the morning, we show up, and there's 3 little kids laying on the floor, screaming and crying, and their dad's in cardiac arrest. And this guy was bigger than me. And obviously, the kids probably, upped the level of anxiety once we walked in. But that area that I worked in, man, it was such an impoverished, tough area that you would routinely see stuff that just, you go, man, I really feel bad for these kids. So I was in one of those phases where I was very, very empathetic to the situation. This is prior to ever getting burned out. And so we get in there, and, I've relived this moment 8,000 times, man. We start working them, and I'm trying to keep the kids back, and they throw them on the backboard, and they're going to lift them over the couch. And I've relived this moment a billion times. And it's just crazy how time slowed down. We were in the confusion and chaos. They didn't strap him to the board. So as they're lifting him over the couch, he starts to fall off the board. And I'm not sure how time works like this, but I literally had enough time to think there is no way that I am going to let this guy drop, shatter his face on the concrete floor in front of these 3 kids. So I knew it was going to hurt. I don't know if I would have changed anything, but so I reached out and caught him. I felt something in my back, and I was like, that's pretty good. But adrenaline, CPR, just kind of put it to the wayside. Drop the guy off of the hospital, and call comes in for structure fire at the sugarcane plant. And those are the scariest fires you could ever be a part of. Everything in the sugar plant's trying to kill you. So I end up being on that for like 7 hours. And again, I guess just because my back was warm, got in the truck, drove home, went to bed, woke up that afternoon, and I couldn't move my legs. And I was like, okay, all right, that's a little more severe than I thought it was going to be. And I'll just shorten the story. I ended up going and getting a spinal fusion from a quack doctor who cut me the wrong way. So literally he cut horizontal. So he severed every one of my spinal nerves. So I'm still regenerating my spinal nerves at this point, 8-10 years later. Is what my neuro tells me. But that landed me in the hospital for, I guess, 3 weeks. So I was told, you're never going to be a fireman again. And I had just hit my swerve, man. And I was enjoying the job, and I'm getting ready to propose to my girlfriend, and this happens. And yeah, the thought of never being a fireman again, that if that isn't a good illustration of how this is different than most jobs, I couldn't fathom being alive and not being a fireman. I couldn't fathom losing that sense of purpose, that righteousness that I feel when we're doing our job to the best of our ability. So yeah, I ended up knowing what the taste of gun oil tastes like. I spent weeks just trying to figure out how I was going to continue. And I got real lucky on the day that I was going to do it. I got a phone call from one of my buddies, and it was ironic because I was envisioning this, like on the movies or whenever somebody's going to get euthanized, you're waiting for the governor to call and to, what do they call that? To repeal the whatever. And nobody was coming to help. And, or that was my perception. And so I got the gun out. I'm getting ready to do it, and the phone rings. And this guy goes, "Hey, man, how you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, not good." And he's like, that sucks, man. Tuna, listen, man, I've dropped another 20 pounds doing hot yoga. I'm like, oh, cool. That's great. And he talked about a couple other things. And then he said, "All right, talk to you later." And I was like, that wasn't the phone call I was hoping for someone to keep me from doing this. And right in that moment where I was like, all right, back to business, my iPad had been running. And by the grace of God, because I'm not real big on coincidences, there's this guy just came back from Afghanistan, lost both his legs, his left hand. He's fucking flying a helicopter, man. He started 3 foundations for wounded warriors. And Hassan, it was like literally I got hit in the face with a baseball bat. What are you doing? So you won't work at you won't work in a specific career field. That's enough to take your life. That how? And listening to that guy made me realize that I just needed to frame it differently and just move forward. So 9 months later, I walk into my neurosurgeon's office and I drop down and I do 50 burpees. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm showing you that I will be a fireman again." And he gets all pissed at me. So I start doing more burpees. And he goes, "Fuck, fine, whatever. I'll sign you off. This is on you." And I'm like, "All right, cool." So he signs me off. And the irony of this is funny. So 10 years goes by. Great. Everything's good, man. Lost a bunch of weight. Went to Thailand and fought for 6 months. Hiked the Appalachian Trail, killing it. And just like you are, I'm really big on leadership, right? So I end up going to a station where I'm, as the captain, I'm the junior guy by about 12 years. And we got to swap out trucks. 3 of the guys that are there are guys that are mentors to me. So that rank shit that ranks out the door. These are the guys that brought me up. So I was like, all right, listen, man, you guys chill out. I'm going to swap the hose from the brush trucks. And so with this whole leadership deal, having to, lead by example, I get up there and something as simple, Heston is literally just grabbing the coupling, turning and pulling like that, catches on the rear of the engine. And I end up with 7-level spinal fusion, 4 of them actually. And this time it was very clear I wasn't going to be a fireman again. My neuro did a neurology or a assessment on me. And well, you want to talk about reality, right? So when I go to the second time, I walk in the office and it's me and my wife. And the neurosurgeon says, "Hey, Tuna, listen, man. So I feel like it's important for me just to be straight up with you." And I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "And I got some phone calls on you." And I'm like, "What do you mean? You're my doctor." And he goes, "Yeah, from your department. And they said that that this was going to be hard for you." And I'm like, "What's going to be hard for me?" And he goes, "Well, you're never going to ride in a fire truck again." And my wife just starts squeezing my hand. And classic Nate Gardner rage kicks in. And I'm like, "You don't fucking know me. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I will be back." Because you got to remember, man, I made captain like 6 years prior. And it took me 6 years to finally get to the point with my crew where I didn't care. When the tones went off, we were going to crush it. But it took me 6 years to get that comfort level as a station officer to be that way. So when this comes down, right when I am finally where I've always dreamt of being as a station officer in training, yeah, man, I used to pull my bunker gear down, like hold it like a baby, just bawl my eyes out. Um, and so that's what predicated me going to the Center of Excellence. That changed my life, man. I met some of the best human beings I've ever met in my entire life. It put my entire career in perspective. And that's where I learned about moral injury and understanding that it wasn't PTSD that I had. It was this moral injury. It was something completely different, although it manifests itself very similar to PTSD. But yeah, once I got out of there, it was just like, okay. Because I think I was so listless prior to being a fireman, the regiment, the routine, the accountability, just it was so amazing to have because I never had that in any of the other careers or professions I've ever done. So, yeah, it was a wild ride.
So you've experienced two times kind of losing your purpose, regaining your purpose, losing your identity, regaining your identity, and then you come to this realization of what's gotten you to kind of be at a loss, and you find out that it's moral injury. So can you break down a little bit what is moral injury and what is PTSD, and how do they how are they similar, how are they different, and what is it that you want people to understand about those two things?
Okay. So, moral insult, moral injury are, they're two peas in a pod. So one of the biggest things that stands out for me is that when we look at this holistically, most people get into the fire service because they want to help, right? And at least that's why I did. And so I have it's a little different now just because of the way people are recruiting and stuff. But historically, if you became a fireman or police officer, it's something you had dreamt about doing. It was something you were passionate about because stereotypically, it has been advertised as a job that not everybody can do. That you need certain traits, uh, certain mindset to be in first response, right? So, with that being said, um, knowing that your barrier of entry into the fire services is that you wanted to help. The most natural sensation to feel after you've been in a situation where you couldn't save somebody's life is to have moral dilemma, right? Because that's literally the job I'm tasked with. And I walk around and I tell people that I've trained my ass off, that I'm ready. And the reality is that sometimes you show up and you're on the wrong team. There's nothing that you can do. Your paradigm shifts at this point, and it's like, now I'm worried about my crew, right? I know I've got enough time on to understand this is a lost cause, right? This is a show code. This is whatever. When things go bad based off of you not having enough resources or anything other than something that is directly inside your control, that's where we start falling into this moral injury. Everybody in the world can experience moral injury. So moral injury occurs when a person commits, witnesses, or fails to prevent an action that violates their deeply held moral beliefs or ethical code. I don't think very many people get into the fire service or law enforcement without a pretty stout moral code, right? You're willing to put your life on the line for somebody else. That's pretty virtuous to start. So knowing that what we do for work potentially can get us hurt, right? You said the validation and the affirmation, right? When, you get hurt and they go, hey, we're going to send you out to pasture after all the years of whatever. A lot of this is built up in me, right? Maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was, but the loss of purpose, not being allowed to do that job, is something that's incredibly difficult to to get around. Okay. So let's talk about, so one of the biggest things that we wanted to talk about here, and prior to getting on here, we talked about things that really need to be conveyed, right? And one of the biggest things is that if we figure out a problem, we have addressed it, okay, we have awareness about it, there has to be an appropriate treatment modality for this issue, right? And you and I talked about this previously. If you take a guy who is medicinally drinking whiskey to help him process the stuff that he's seeing, right? That guy is not an alcoholic. He's a guy that has some mental issues that's using alcohol to numb his issues, right? You take that guy, and because his issue manifested itself in a way that had alcohol to do with it, we send him to a detox center. We send him to the drunk tank, right? And what do they do there? They literally strip you down right to the raw nerves, right? Now you don't have any of your medicine in your system. You're left with one option, and that's to face the music. So when they're telling you for 30 days that you're an alcoholic, and in those 30 days, almost every program, they'll dive just the slightest bit into the psychological issues. Why is it that you're drinking? So they rip off the Band-Aid, and then they give you no tools to deal with the actual issue, which is whether it's PTSD, moral injury, burnout, whatever it is. I've had guys call me from in detox going, I'm going to blow this place up. If I don't get out of here, this is the most embarrassing thing I've ever been a part of. And it's like, bud, listen, regardless of how you got there, use this opportunity to learn. There's going to be stuff that you can learn in there. Just know you're right. You're not an alcoholic. And for him, the hurt was so deep because he's like, I'm a goddamn fireman. And I'm like, stop the righteousness, dude. That's your job. You're allowing that to kind of infuse into who you are. You are you. You're not a fireman. That's what you do for work. But to think that translates into your daily life outside of work, whether it's seniority or walking around, you got the stickers all over your truck and whatever, it doesn't make you any cooler. So the second you start having some humility and realize that you're just like, listen, man, when I was in the Center of Excellence, one of the most defining moments was when I went and tried to get my razor because I wanted to shave. And I was 10 minutes over the time that you were allowed to go and get it. So here I am talking to a health tech who's basically like a CNA in a hospital. And I said, listen, I just need my razor. I got to shave. She goes, well, you can't. And I'm not sure where this came from, but I'm like, do you know who I am? I'm fucking captain. You don't think I can handle using my razor? She goes, apparently not. You're here, right? Woo, man. You want to get kicked in the junk and realize that you are not as cool as you think you are? She was right, man. She said, Tuna, until you freaking submit to the program, it's never going to get any better for you. And that's where belief comes in. You have to believe. You have to have faith that you're going to persevere through this. And that's a great segue to, you wanted me to talk about my relationship with God at some point. And I'm all about authenticity and honesty. My road with God has been a really rocky road. And like I told you the other day, even when my faith is being tested, when you find out that you're not who you thought you were, because a lot of times we create these personas, right? Tuna. That's my fireman persona. And I allowed that to define who I was. To a fault. And that's one of the reasons why I came on your podcast, just because of the ideology of what you're promoting. Because in the real fucking world, man, the fire service is like number 4 or 5. It's not in my top, not even in my top 4. But man, I was willing to literally forego spending time with my kids for it. Oh, I got to come up with this new lesson plan. I have to, I got to come up with this training, blah, 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 blah. And you just realize that when you wake up and you go, hey, morning, God, I know I suck at this, but thank you. Thank you for allowing me to open my eyes this morning. Thank you for my wife putting up with all my crap. Thank you for these 2 beautiful little kids and this crazy ass golden retriever. And like I said, man, I don't know if it's quantifiable. But those days are better. I don't know how to define it. I don't know how to explain it, but there's just a sense of calmness and peace that I'm where I'm supposed to be, because I acknowledge the people around me, and I'm thankful for them. I go through my phases, and I think that's one of the things that I really like about my relationship with God, is that it's, there's ebb and flow, just like with every other relationship in life. And but I can tell you this, that the times where I am the most lost, where I feel listless, if I just spend a couple minutes talking to him, just makes things better. I'm able to see things more clearly. And when you put somebody else first and you put yourself in the pecking order, not on top of it, you just have a lot more humility, and you can appreciate and really enjoy the people around you more. So,
Man, that's all. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Tuna. And I think that one of the things we talked about is that being in the fire service, we get a ton of exposure. We get a ton of resources to help us deal with those issues, right? But how do we help our families, our wives, our kids, the people around us that love us? How did you deal with that?
yeah. So first off, I'll just say that I'm one of the luckiest dudes on the planet. Um, I have a wife that she will beat your ass if you talk disparagingly about me. She is loyal to a fault. Um, and when I say to a fault, it's because our spouses, if you're in the right relationship, they love you so profoundly that they're willing to deal with way more shit than they're meant to deal with. I tell people all the time, being the spouse of a first responder is one of the hardest existences like known to man, because in the same way it took me to figure out, and this is another class that I'm working on, is reintegration. How do you come home and your wife tells you, hey, listen, and she's pissed, right? You just spent 24 hours getting your teeth smashed in. You just had a pediatric code. You come home, and this person that should be absolutely God, first ring, second ring, me and my wife. Third ring, me, my wife, and my kids and their family, grandparents, whatever. But if me and my wife aren't right, we're going to be shitty parents. We are not going to do the things that we need to do for our children. So until you start getting your rings right, and the first one has to be believe. I don't care who you believe in. You have to believe in something bigger than yourself. And that person is what hopefully, or that entity is what holds you personally accountable. And then the next ring is your wife, right? And this is where it gets really interesting. And when I think this is where it's going to get really good for the fire services, when we all start, you included, spreading this word in minimum standards. Not with 10 years on. The ship sailed at this point. So when guys start realizing, and we start having spouse classes in fire school, in rookie school, because listen, This all boils down to performance, right? At the end of the day, we're expected to show up and function on the highest level possible, right? Cops and firemen, without a doubt, are held to a different standard. How can I be efficient if I'm not there mentally, if I'm not present? So it makes sense from an administrative standpoint, just for the millions of dollars of money spent on EAP and therapists, to get ahead of this thing so that this doesn't take place. So, to go back to the original question, when my wife got home one day, she says to me, sit down. She never talks like that. So when she talks like that, I listen. She goes, check this out, man. Every third day, you get to go with all your homies and go save babies and pull cats out of fucking trees, while me and your daughter sit at home wondering if you're going to make it home the next morning. Broke me. Because I just went, dude, I've been in the hospital like 10 times since we've been together doing this job. I still act absolutely reckless. And I never once thought what that impact was to be on my wife. It's a big impact when you're laying in bed for a year and she's taking care of your kids. Like I'll owe her for the rest of my life. But what happened is that my wife started to get in tune with what's going on. And my wife could tell me before I even knew that I was getting upset, hey, what's going on at work? Because that's the only thing that stresses me out. Like at home, whatever, we got 2 little kids, they're both awesome. And it was in that moment when she started doing that, it made me realize, like, bro, how have I been trying to do this alone and like hide my emotions from her? When the reality is that vulnerability will create a bond with your spouse that is 10 times tighter than anything else. When you can actually, because when we're on shift, right? You can't show emotion. You can't show emotion in the lion's den. So when you get home, just function the same way. Why would I talk about it? Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. But the reality is that you have to. And you have to, we had a great system, man. My wife, I'd call her on the way home and she could tell by the inflection of my voice what my night was like. And without saying a word, I'd walk in, she'd give me a kiss, and then she would literally leave. And I'd go out, smash the heavy bag, go for a ride, come back, and about noon, she'd go, you ready? I'm like, yeah, let's start our day. It was after a while of that, though, that I realized that I was starting to take advantage of that. And if we're going to be honest with ourselves, how simple would it be to go, hey, listen, babe, just give me an hour, okay? I just got to process some stuff, and then chuck me the baby, and we're off running. That grace period is so huge, but what's even more huge is not taking goddamn advantage of that. Like I have guys that will come to me like, I need 3-4 hours. Every shift? Yeah. There's a problem. That's not okay. Your wife, who was home taking care of a puking child, taking care of your other kid, taking the other kid to freaking football, making dinner, doing all those things, and nobody is honking the horn when she drives by. Nobody's doing this. Nobody's saying, oh my God, you're a fireman. That's amazing. She's the rock. She is the person that allows me to be the jackass that I am. When it came to a point where it was real that I was never going to make it back to the job, there was a night that I lost it. And I went out back and I was going to break everything on the patio. And this is why I love my wife more than anything in the world. She comes out and she goes, what are you doing? And I said, I can't process this, that I'm never going to fucking be bombing down a road and see a column of fire again, column of smoke. I just can't fathom it. And I'm pissed. And you know what she said? She said, break it all. Just don't hurt my cactuses. She goes, what you're going through, it's not fair. You're one of the people that wants to be there. If this will make you feel better, break it all.
That's man, that's huge. I mean, just having her understand what you're going through and all that you've been through those last 10 years and now I think it's important. I think I want you to circle back into something that you're going to talk about. I want you to talk about a couple of things. I want you to develop a little bit more and explain the difference between PTSD and moral injury. You had started to explain and how important it is for people to get it, and specifically, you talked about who needs to get this message, meaning the guys that are coming into the job. They need to understand the difference between the two and how they can maybe avoid that. And so please break that down for us.
Okay. So, it's really important that this delineation gets made. And the other part that's really important about this is that a lot of this stuff is still new, in the sense of moral recovery, ethical recovery, some of these treatment modalities for moral injury, simply because, as I'm going to illustrate here in a second, they can be profoundly different, yet absolutely mirror each other. So your body's compensatory mechanism, the way it processes stuff, and the way when it feels trauma or experiences things outside your comfort zone, especially if it's a profound event, a lot of these feelings from either moral injury or PTSD, they can kind of mask each other. They can kind of get blurry, right? But when we show up to a house and it's let's just say it's an altered mental status, right? What do we use to figure out what it is, right? Is he a diabetic? Is he on drugs? Is he having an adverse reaction to something? How do we do that? We do what's called a differential diagnosis, right? Each disease modality has its own indicators, right? Some of those might mirror some other ones, but there's going to be some that differentiate without a doubt, right? That's what's so important here. Okay. So let's just go, if the viewers out there can picture, there's two circles and they're overlapping each other with a small elliptical section in the middle. Each circle is going to be telling you what the symptoms and side effects and the manifestations emotionally of PTSD and moral injury are. But that center part, these are shared side effects and symptoms, okay? And this is why this is so profoundly important to understand, is that when you hear the shared symptoms, you'll understand why moral injury is misdiagnosed as PTSD all the time. More importantly, why people will diagnose it as PTSD purposely and not address moral injury, because if you're addressing moral injury stereotypically as a department, that moral injury is coming from you as an administration. So stereotypically, that's not a can of worms they want to open, because they're going to have to fix things themselves internally. Let's say that your stress is because your station is short 2 medics every single shift, and you're losing people because you're rolling out short. That is moral injury. That moral injury, because the day you showed up, you looked at the schedule and went, dude, we're short again. It doesn't matter what the call was. On the way there, you already know you're behind the 8 ball. There's going to be blame. Who's going to get blamed? It's going to be the department. But they're the ones making you run short. They're the ones making you sleep deprived because there isn't 2 other guys to ride the truck, right? So let's just get into it. PTSD, right? I think most people in the fire service now are pretty aware of what PTSD is, but there's some symptoms of PTSD that people don't normally take into consideration, right? So obviously the first one you've experienced recently or maybe in the past, uh, a highly traumatic event, right? Where you felt fearful of your life or that whatever this event was could happen to you again. PTSD is stereotypically clinically defined as a singular event so profound that it affects your ability to have day-to-day relationships. Okay. I already told you what moral injury is. So PTSD is exposure to actual events, like a disturbing event, a traumatic event, fear, paranoia, horror, flashbacks, hypervigilance, your startle reflex, which is, hypervigilance. That's that stellate ganglion nerve block that people get to deal with the hypervigilance and memory loss. Okay. So here's some of the side effects of moral injury. An exposure to an event which transgresses one's moral beliefs. Okay. And I'll illustrate a real quick example of that. Grief, shame, regret, alienation, and then a breakdown of your moral standards. Because if you do something enough times, you can figure out a way. If it's hurting you mentally and you don't have the resolve to fix it, you can figure out a way to justify it, right? No problem. We're short. I didn't take that class. However you want to, whatever compensatory mechanism you use. But in the background, what you're doing is your entire moral system is collapsing. Here's where it gets really crazy, Austin, because tell me if any of these sound familiar. So these are the shared mirrored side effects that both of these ailments produce. Depression, anxiety, substance abuse, insomnia. That's weird. I wonder if any of us ever experienced that. Anger, nightmares, and then the big one, suicidality. Okay. Those are the ones. You could have all 5 of the center, right? But because nobody even knows about the moral injury circle over here, because those things are shared, that is going to be the diagnosis. PTSD. It's the easiest thing to do. It's the most blanketed thing to do. And up until just recently, the idea is that regardless of if it's moral injury or PTSD, PTSD treatment will help. But we're finding out that it doesn't. Because PTSD, especially from like a singular event, right? You've got EMDR, you've got somatic therapy, you've got CBT, you've got dialectical behavioral therapy, right? Those are all things easily processed. Aromatherapy. Dude, the smell of airbags. It doesn't matter where I am. If I smell an airbag, I'm going back. I'm going back to a ton of different calls. But once I did EMDR, I can go back. I don't have the same visceral reaction that I had before. So when you go and you do the EMDR, it just basically desensitizes you to the visceral aspect of that call. It creates a break, right? So you can look at the memory, but you can look at it objectively because you're not feeling the visceral feelings that every time you think about. Like I have a couple that to this day, it doesn't matter how much therapy that you're going to have. It's just one of those calls that's just fucked up. And we have a lot of those, right? So where this is really interesting is to circle back to the spouse thing, right? If you're not open and honest with your wife, and explain stuff like this to her, they are by far and away the best early warning detection system known for a husband. They know before we know. So having that communication and saying, listen, like my wife knows, like if I'm in a sporty mood, I'll be like, hey, babe, listen, I'm a little sideways today. If I do something and you know what I mean, just call me out. And my wife loves that. She loves to call me out. But it holds me accountable. And what that does is that I get this warning way before I'm going to start doing the things that are really negative to myself, the self-loathing, the self-sabotage, all that stuff. We're going to talk about it. We're going to approach this in the way that freaking grown-ups do. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't bother me. We're going to talk about it. So why would we do it any differently at home? But there's some nuances to doing it at home, right? One of the best things that a therapist ever said to me, for the longest time, brother, I thought, if you've never held a dead kid in your arms, you're not going to help me. If you haven't walked a mile in these fucking shoes, good luck. And she said to me, this 90-pound little therapist, soaking wet 90 pounds, she goes, hey, I could never be a fireman. I don't want to be a fireman. But check this out. I am here to treat your reaction to a call from 14 years ago that you still can't talk about without crying. Is that normal? Do I need to even know what the call is? I don't. All I need to do is help you with the way you're reacting to the memory. I don't care what the memory is. Dude, that was like, I don't have to relive this every time. What I do have to do is try to figure out and manage the emotions that I'm experiencing from it. So with that being said, when I would come home, I had a whole routine, because I had those moments that you were talking about where, everything was second place to the job. And when I finally made that realization, after quite a few months of not being happy, I started doing this thing where I would leave shift and I'd walk, as I'm walking out the door, I'd go clunk, like it was a time card. Because a lot of people that work in factories and, work on the docks, I guarantee you, the second they punch out, that shit's in the freaking rear view. They're not worrying about what bricks they're going to lay tomorrow. They're not worrying about what boat they're going to move wherever. Are we? Oh yeah, man. I'm looking at the schedule to see who I have next shift. We're in like persistent stress. We're not even talking about dealing with 10 or 12 other freaking people, living with them. Everything about our job is unnatural. Like, a bunch of grown men having a sleepover every third day. But to bring it back around, if you are not honest and open with your wife, I don't see how you get through this if you are experiencing this stuff, because, your wife or your husband should be one of the pillars, one of your foundational pillars in how you show up in the world every day. So it is just as important that they understand all of this, just like we do, because it is a team, right? I mean, it's just like anything else. We say, oh, it's a team when you need this. It's always a team in every single thing we do. If she's out with her friends, are we still a team? Yeah. You know why? Because I'm at home watching the kids so she can go out and have a break from the madness. We're a team. And you wouldn't withhold very important information from your teammates, would you? No. So why do you hold from your wife? So the reintegration is one of the biggest problems that I think we have in the fire service, is when you come home after holding, whatever it is and doing whatever you did, and your wife's like, oh my God, my friend, she bought the same dress. And I'm supposed to act like that's important to me. Bro, it better be important to me. She's the one holding down the fort every time I leave to go play. So yeah, it's important. So if you are not someone who is looking at this career as though I need to create a relationship with my wife so that she understands the environment that I work in, the day-to-day stress, That way she has an appreciation for what I'm dealing with. But just in saying that stuff, it allows you to take stock of what your stressors are. And maybe that's a focal point or a turning point for you. Just that awareness of like, man, this is all right. Well, how can I change that? Because we're real big right now into awareness, right? And awareness is super important because it's the first part, but it's literally the first part. Until you address it, figure out how to fix it. Yeah, awareness is great, dude. I am aware that that tiger is coming over here. Am I going to do something about it, or am I going to let it come over here and eat me? Because it's very similar, man. If you leave this stuff untreated, I'm 15 guys in that have lost to suicide. Fucking 15. Some of the best dudes that I've ever met. Some of the most strong-willed people that I've ever met. And when you realize that this stuff can take them down, it's a scary thought process for you. When a chief north of us took his life a couple years ago, the very next day they caught 2 more guys getting ready to kill themselves. Why do you think that is? Because they thought that this guy who was their rock, their mentor, the guy that the entire goddamn department loved, not just the department, South Florida loved, if he couldn't beat his demons, what am I even doing? Why am I trying? If this guy, who's the ultimate squared away go-getter, can succumb to this, what chance do I have? And that's the reason why it's so important to find a tribe of people. If I could show you my text messages from Jeremy and some of these other guys, you don't see that. Hey, brothers, just wanted to let you guys know, going through some stuff right now, I'm having a hard time. Man, when I was at the firehouse, somebody said that shit to me, be like, what a bitch. Now that I'm out and I understand and I've got some separation from the toxicity of what that environment looks like, man, it's a toxic environment. And sometimes it takes a little distance to really appreciate that. And yeah, the suicide portion of this job is it's pretty crazy. And in knowing that, that's one of the reasons why this message that we're getting out today and going to be continuing to deliver is the fact that you're worthy, man. God loves you. Your brothers love you. And I can tell you, when I was in the hole, there could have been 10 dudes in there with spotlights. I never saw them. And until we get a grip on the fact that this job can do some pretty horrific things to us spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, and we start taking it a little bit more seriously, we're going to continue to have hundreds, not 50, not 60, hundreds. And those are the ones that are reported, right? You talk to Jeff Dill in the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, he'll tell you, I paid money to get those stats every day, because at my station, every single day, civilian fire casualties, line of duty deaths, and then, damn it, dude, I forgot I had put something else. And I would have guys go, man, why do you put that up there? That's kind of dark. And it's like, brother, that's why we're here. Like, literally, those are the reasons why we're here. When we train, it's so that you're not up there and I'm not up there. And so that we don't have 15 more people up there that we were sworn to protect. So it's awareness that you understand that there's literally 118 guys this year that have taken their life because of this job. That should be something to put in the forefront of your mind, that whether you're experiencing anything right now or not, to start putting out your tripwires, to start having a defense system like, hey, man, some of the best dudes I've ever met have succumbed to this. I'm not impervious to this. So I need to start setting out those warning signs or those warning systems to go, hey, man, it's starting. One of the big delineations I think that's important too about like moral injury is the fact that I would say stereotypically, and I'm not sure what your department's like, but the fire department is being sold as something that anybody can do right now. I don't know what your thoughts are. I don't think that's true. I don't think anybody can be a fireman. I think it's something. I think you might be able to cultivate it, but there's something inside of us that's just different, and I've always cherished that. But the older I got, the deeper I got into my awareness, I also realized that that little special thing about us is the reason why we allow ourselves to get so far down into a hole before we do anything about it. We've also conditioned ourselves to ignore stuff to a fault as well. And, I don't have very many friends that are outside of the fire service, which is something I'm working on because it's just constant. There is no escaping the fire service. But it is amazing when you like hang out with your wife's friends and they ask you a story and you tell them, and it's, let's just say on your scale of fucked upness, it's a 2. And you look at the faces of the normal people. I say normal people because I think that we're special. Jaws on chest, mortified, and you're like, oh, I better dial it down to a half. I can't even go 1 with these people. When you do that a couple times, it'll start to really make you appreciate the shit that we do and give you an understanding of like, yeah, no wonder we're special. Dude, it's not normal to go do some of this stuff. So with that being said, communication first off with your wife is absolutely paramount. Understanding the rings, where you stand, because people live for their kids, right? I mean, I live for my kids, but my wife comes first. I wouldn't have those 2 if she didn't make them. They came after her. And because we get into this mindset of whatever the daily rub is with each other, that's so minuscule, man. This is the woman that literally gave birth to these 2 little things that I would murder the world for. The most important things in my life. But I have to remember, she gave them to me. Without her, there is no kids. So if I can't make her happy and make sure that she's feeling satisfied and fulfilled, I'm failing on the highest level, and it will come crashing down. Because the second you're not on the same page with your wife, with your kids, I won't do it. I won't try to raise kids with somebody that doesn't have the same, value set and morals that I do. And luckily for me, why my wife is, we're 2 peas in a pod. But those are the conversations that if you don't have those with your wife, and showing her gratitude, right? So we owe it to the job and to the people that allow us to live that life, which is your wife and your kids. They have to be just of paramount importance to you. And like we talked about, obviously God's always in the background. I mean, he's the forefront, but the stuff that you have to do day to day, that's with your wife and your kids and making sure that your family unit is safe. Because without them, man, you're not going to be effective at work. I used to tell the guys, here's the deal, man. Like you have your internal, your external stressors, your ambient stressors, things that you cannot avoid, right? But if you understand that when you come to shift, your goal is to be at a 0 on your bullshit meter, right? You should have processed whatever it was. That whole adage of don't go to bed mad, that's not for me. Mine's don't go to shift mad. Because it's 24 hours. And who knows what's going to happen in those 24 hours? And you might not get a chance to tell her you love her again. And I know that sounds dramatic, but my career has shown me that literally in the blink of an eye, you won't be there. But until you start that realization that the every single day, the first amount of gratitude goes towards your wife and kids for allowing you to literally do the best job on the planet, then you're failing there. And like you said, creating that affirmation in your wife. Hey, babe, listen, I know it's hard. I know I make life interesting. I know that loving me can't be easy. So thank you for always being that stand-up person that it does not matter if I'm being an asshole or not. In public, you're going to get dressed down. In private, she's going to dress me down. Don't put me in that position again. You were being an asshole. I'll get in the car and be like, we told them. And my wife will go, yep, yeah, we did. That was your fault, though. And that's why I love her, man. There's no bullshit. It's just, and that's something that else is important with your reintegration, right? Is that creating an environment where your wife doesn't have to tiptoe around you. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine, being home with the kids for 24 hours and doing all. So the reason why I say this, because that's what I am now. I'm the house lady. You talked about the loss of purpose. That was the most profound loss of purpose I've ever had. All it took, though, was making the realization that I have a new purpose, and that's to be the best goddamn dad I can possibly be. Make up for the time that I chose that freaking job over them. My daughter's 10 now, and she's all independent, and I can't help but think that when your daughter asks you, when you leave your family unprotected for 40 days, why you're leaving. And I'm very, very, very honest with my kids. My kids are very intuitive. That daddy has to go unscrew up his brain so that he can be a lot less violent and a lot less angry and do the things that you want to do. I have a hard time with people that don't want to do the work. There's a lot of those guys that, they come to me and they want the help, but they don't want to do the work. And, you can lead the horse to water. I've drowned the horse so many times. And that's a massive source of moral injury for me, is that I've literally almost put my marriage in jeopardy trying to help people from the job. And when they realize that there's going to be time and effort spent, they just walk away. And I'm left with the pieces, wondering if this guy's going to pick up his goddamn phone in the morning. Because the last conversation we had was that he was going to take his life. Having to call law enforcement on one of your buddies because you're afraid that they're going to take their life. Those are all realities that I think are very important for the younger generation to understand, is that left unchecked, this stuff wreaks havoc. Holy havoc, man. So having that family structure to help you through, and like you said before, God, if you don't create your team early on in your career, I used to call it dial a brother, and I just had a group of guys that all were in the transitional phase. They've made the first step, they've made the awareness, they're getting treatment, whatever. One of my buddies calls it holding space, right? And I like that term because you can do it for everybody. How many times has your wife been upset about something and you go to fix it because we're fixers, and she goes, I just want you to listen. Well, why though? Like you don't, we could fix it. Like, you sure? Like, all right, I'll listen, but it just seems really fucking stupid. Like, I have the answer. All right. And you just listen. And all she's telling you is that I just need the catharsis of telling you my story right now. You don't have to go over the top anything. just show that you're in this with me and that my feelings matter. It's not outside the realm of possibility, right? I mean, we should be able to put our issues aside for a few minutes and deal with the person that is our other half. So if you don't take stock in the things, but here's the big thing though, is that when we're in it, it's really hard to think outside of it. So having that other person being there to go, hey, so our code word is pineapple. And if we're out somewhere and she's like, pineapple, that means I'm getting outside my element. I'm getting a little crazy, getting a little talkative, and just having that knowing that your wife is there for you all the time. It's just a huge deal. Um, yeah, that's all there is on
Brother,
that.
brother, I mean, thank you for from the bottom of my heart for you to being vulnerable, sharing all that with me, sharing that with us. Um, just I can tell your passion about this because of what you've been through, what you've lived through, and that's what motivated me to get this thing started and just share stories like yours, to the guys and girls out there at the firehouse. And like you said, if we can catch a couple of the guys and girls early in their careers, understanding the importance of putting the first things first and prioritizing the right things in their lives, putting God first and making sure that their family is right at home, and make sure that they're ready mentally, spiritually, and physically to do the job. So then everything else becomes easy. We can help the people that we need to help on the calls. We can come home and be the husbands we're supposed to be, and the fathers we're supposed to be, and make a difference the way we're supposed to be. So Tuna, like, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. You've already made a huge impact on me, as I've told you, and I hope that your story makes an impact out there to people. So if somebody wants to reach out to you and perhaps continue on this conversation, how can they get a hold of you?
Uh, RRR. So it's 3 R's ranch 343 at Gmail. It's probably the best way. Or Nate Gardner on Facebook or whatever. That's how a lot of people reach out. So just a shameless plug here. I don't know what anybody's doing in the middle of May, but one of the most important things in my life is I don't know if you've ever heard of Rick George or tactical resiliency training. But we've got a class going on that's in May at the Mid-Atlantic Fire Conference in Atlanta. And if you want to take something that will absolutely shatter your existence and change your mind on how you operate, come out and take that class. The only thing I can tell you though is it's 24 straight hours, and you gotta pull up your chin strap because it gets absolutely crazy. So listen, I feel as though we're going to end up doing another one of these because I did what I always do. It's just tuna tails. And I didn't get some of the important stuff about the differentiation between PTSD, moral injury, moral insult. And I would love to come back on at some point and talk
For sure, my
about
brother.
the solutions, because awareness is huge, right? But until you put something in place to combat it, you're just an aware person. That's all it is. You're woke, but you're not working on it. So, um, and the interesting thing about this subject is the fact that it is literally in its infancy. Um, that's why they've been using PTSD treatment, because there wasn't a modality for moral injury. The people that moral injury affects the most are guys like us. Um, and it's the most egregious form of moral injury is when you are the righteous one, when you are the voice of change and that change gets shot down. You your story, very impactful for me. You have one of the most clear-cut examples of moral injury that you can have. You're a warrior, man, to continue to show up with a smile on your face. That tells me everything I need to know about you and your love of the job. And I don't mean to get serious on the way out, but you're someone that people can look up to just by your actions. And the catharsis of telling your story and understanding that you can persevere through stuff like that. But it takes moral fortitude, man, which you obviously freaking have. And that is something that, to me, when someone hears your story and they hear like Jeremy's story is crazy. The fact that you can still show up and do the job and still be doing what you're doing right now, trying to make it better, even outside of work. Like I said, that tells me that's one of the reasons why I came on here, is you're a very like-minded person in the sense of you're a younger guy, and I'm happy that you have made this correlation this early on, because when you're in your 50s, man, it's a lot harder to start changing fundamentals and start wrapping your head around this stuff. If you get to it early and you just kind of adopt it as a lifestyle, it's not really that big of a deal. But if you're reacting to it, it's tough. So the other thing that was important about moral injury versus PTSD that I forgot to tell you is a lot of times the reason why moral injury is so pronounced is because it's actually happening now. It's a constant, right? Like you're showing up to shift. You're still working there. You still have to see the same assholes or whoever made the decisions they made. It's current. It's actually happening now. So obviously the severity of those symptoms are going to be way worse because you're in it. And it's not like you can escape it unless you go to a different department or whatever. But even then, the psychology of I'm running so I can go do something in another, those are all the layers to the psychology of being a fireman. It's so deep, man. And when people start understanding the myriad of emotional issues that we face just at the station level before we even leave the bay, that's when you'll start truly understanding what your ambient stressors are. I've never even met you before, but hearing your story and you doing this, to you, kudos to your podcast, to persevere through what you have and to continue to do this and have the positive mindset that this stuff is important to share. That's the kind of stuff people take notice of, brother. And just keep doing what you're doing because you're doing a great job. So,
Tuna, thank you, man. I appreciate it. That means a lot to me. I mean, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out and spending a couple hours with me. I hope that this message gets out there. And like I said, thank you for being vulnerable. Thanks for showing up. And I'll definitely going to have you back on because this is definitely a conversation that I would like to have with you and just get it out there so people can hear and hopefully, as you said, not just hear and be aware, but do something about it. So
yep.
If you want to reach out to Tuna, again, send him an email, find him on Facebook. And brother, thanks again, and see you next time.
You got it, brother. Thank you, and be safe out there.